Our next panel will focus on something that is so aligned with all of our conversations today about how we can connect problem solvers with to find and fund some of the biggest problems, solutions to some of the biggest problems facing our world. We're hearing about many of those problems today, but how do we put the money behind it? And this is, putting your money where your mouth is. So please welcome to the stage to talk about how to accelerate this social change we've been talking about today and over the past couple of days. The Honorable Henrietta Fore, she's Chairman and CEO of Holzman International, Dr. Cecilia Conrad, CEO of Lever for Change, and Carla Thompson Payton, Vice President for Program Strategy for the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Ladies.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. We are without a moderator, and therefore we're going to do a discussion. And we've got a couple of ideas that we want to share with you. So, Cecilia, why don't we start with you?
All right. Hello. I am the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called Lever for Change. We're 4 years old. And our mission is to accelerate social change by mobilizing essentially more money to better projects. And we do that in a couple ways. First, we, on behalf of donors or groups of donors, we design and manage competitions, challenges, open calls that will be tailored to whatever the particular problem is that we're looking at. And we emphasize in these open calls transparency, equity, and also that the grants should be sizable, multi-year grants, 10 million plus, that we ask for the donors to commit. One of our first challenges, some of you may have heard last night, the 100 and change for the MacArthur Foundation and the Sesame IRC project. Every one of those challenges, generates more great ideas than the original set of donors may be willing to fund. So the other part of our work is to make those wonderful, pre-vetted, impactful ideas available to other donors who frequently will tell us that they are overwhelmed with trying to find something to fund. So we're trying to kind of correct a market imperfection here, where donors have a difficult time finding projects to fund or organizations to fund, and organizations have a hard time getting access to those donors. Now, as I said, we run these open calls on behalf of all types of donors. One of our more recent ones was for Kellogg. It's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about why a donor might work with us. And because Kellogg is well known, why would they need to work with somebody like us?
So, is this your cue, Carla?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So in 2020, we know that we were dealing with a global pandemic, and we were also dealing with a racial awakening of folks recognizing that race was impacting lives in very dangerous ways. And so the Kellogg Foundation, we'd been in existence 90 years at that time, and we wanted to do something that was bold and innovative, but we also wanted to be grounded in our DNA of community engagement, racial equity, and leadership. We wanted to work outside of our grant-making footprint. And so we partnered with Lever for Change because we knew that they've done a number of challenges, and they were really good about making sure that it was a participatory process and that it was reciprocal in the relationships with those who were applying. And those were very important values to us. And so we put out the challenge saying that we wanted groups from all across the globe who are willing to be bold and innovative in eradicating racial inequities, colonialism, thinking about ways in which we can have children be the center of our world, and that children could thrive regardless of where they were born and what circumstances they were born in. And so we launched Racial Equity 2030, a $90 million challenge of the time of which we would give 10 awardees $1 million for a year of planning to really think through how they can bring together groups of local community leaders, groups of families and children, groups of organizations together to combat whatever social issue they identified in their local community. And after that year of planning, we would award $80 million across 5 organizations for the next 10 years for them to work on their solution. And then in turn, their commitment in working on that solution was that they would share what they did, how they went about doing it with the world so that we could all learn from this process. And Leverage for Change helped us make that happen.
It's a fantastic model because you've involved the community, you've passed on the lessons learned to others. It is multi-year, and it is for operating expenses, among others, and you have a guide, someone that you would trust to send you where you need to go. Fabulous models. So I will toss in two partnerships that we started a little bit before the pandemic, but clearly came into their own before the pandemic. So when I was at UNICEF, we did something with Microsoft as a public-private partnership that was a passport to learning. And it was that you could learn online. We had no idea how important this was going to be, but during the pandemic, clearly every country in the world wanted to think about how to do hybrid education because there just weren't enough children and teachers in the schools. But once we were able to talk to the ministries, there were even countries like East Timor that picked it up for their whole national education system. And it meant that the children could stay in school, and that made a huge difference nationally to a country. But we hadn't thought how we would use it ahead of time. But what we needed was a way to telegraph the information and to have it go around the world so that other countries would pick it up, that other organizations would pick it up. But these kinds of partnerships are the kind that we needed. And the other one that we started was Generation Unlimited, which was to try to get skills to young people between the ages of 10 and 24 anywhere in the world. And I just heard last night that they've reached 250 million young people around the world, and it's growing. So you realize that scale is going to be important. So would you two talk a bit about how you approach scaling up? Once you see a good idea, you really want to help scale it. So Carla, why don't you start?
Sure.
And then Celia.
Sure. So for scale for us is we have a value stream that we believe communities can find the solutions to their own difficulties. And what they actually need is partnership. And they need some doors open to allow them to be able to work on the things that are most interesting to them. So for us, when we thought about Racial Equity 2030 and scaling it, we knew that we wanted it to be a process where they were learning from each other. And so while we anticipated a couple of hundred of applications, we actually received 1,400 applications. But each one of those applicants received one-on-one review from 5 other organizations who were also applying. So they could talk in real hand around what was important to them, highlight some areas that the applicant may have been blinded to. And that feedback really helped the applications and the participants to have a better understanding of the ecosystem that they were working in. And it also identified other partners with them. And so at the end, while we couldn't fund all 1,400, what we did was build a network in a community, because now everyone who's part of Racial Equity 2030 knows the work that's being done. They have a sense of how they can partner with them. And then when they're thinking about scaling, they have a network of folks to talk to who are also going through a similar solutioning. And then they too can lean on to get ideas and share mechanisms. Resources are always scarce, but one of the commitments we had as the Kellogg Foundation was that, yes, we put in the first 90 million, but we invite other philanthropies, other public-private partnerships to also invest in these communities, whether it be on racial equity, whether it be on education, whether it be on land rights. There's a way in which we can all work together, and all of us can really be the partners that we want to be as we think about tomorrow and the benefits that children need today.
So one moment. So what you've created is an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And that's a very important asset, and it's one that you've been working on. And then can we at some point come back to what you're doing in Haiti, because that's also an ecosystem. Okay, go for it.
I just wanted to interject that one of the things that we've heard from across our 11 challenges from the organizations who've applied and who didn't ultimately receive one of our grants was the strong benefit of this feedback that they receive. They receive feedback through our participatory review process and feedback from the evaluation panels that we put together for each one of our challenges. And they tell us that they've taken that feedback, revised their proposals, and sometimes gone back to funders they had engaged with in the past, who had never thought to ask them, what would you do if you really had a big grant that you had over multiple years and have been able to successfully get funding? This sort of secondary, what I call the secondary market work that's embedded in our challenges, has accounted for half of over half of the 1.6 billion that we've facilitated over the past 4 years. So when you talk about scale, that's our expectation, but what we've learned is that hardly any organization has ever been given the freedom to think big. Mostly they're worried from year to year, who's the next funder going to be for the next tranche of work? And that doesn't allow for really thinking about how could I seriously move the needle on many problems that are out there. So in working with Kellogg and other donors, we share that value of transferring agency to the organizations, but then we provide support to the ones who end up being finalists. We provide one-on-one support to build out a real plan for how do they get from A to B, because that's a common issue. Since they haven't done it before, they can use that coaching and assistance. And even after the initial awards are made, we sometimes find that there is still another period of building it out. And sometimes, since most of them end up being collaboratives or partnerships, the Sesame IRC that you heard the other day was an example. Even in that case, here are two multinational big name organizations, but the idea of really doing this 5-year intervention required some close time in building the partnership, writing out what's going to happen, and figuring out what the scaling plan will be. So I think donors have to be prepared for the fact that we have kind of starved the sector in terms of the ability to think big, and now that we want to move in that direction, we're going to need to offer support.
Absolutely.
Oh, excellent, and excellent scaling. So Carla, talk a little bit about Haiti and what you're doing there, and then let's talk about how could you use prizes that might help.
Sure. So we've been in Haiti for 15 years, and primarily our work is focused on education, maternal child health, and entrepreneurship, skill building, workforce development. And as you know, Haiti is going through tremendous strife right now. And we're one of the last few foundations that are actively still working in Haiti. And so this week we launched Pockets of Hope. And it's our challenge to the philanthropic community to reinvest in Haiti. And we're having a $60 million challenge to say, join us in continuing to do this much needed work. Haiti needs you. And so we've launched it. We've raised about half of those resources, and we're looking to continue to raise additional resources to reinvest in Haiti. Because again, we believe communities have the ability to solution for themselves, and all they need is a helping hand. And so we want to make sure that the children, families, and communities of Haiti have what they need to get through this hard time, because there's no saying when someplace else won't have a hard time. And unless we come together collectively, we'll never see the long-term systemic change that we want. And so that is a Kellogg value. That is our DNA. We don't leave when time gets tough. We actually double down and try to get more people to join us.
I think that deserves it.
Perfect.
So you've posed an interesting question here, and I want to talk a bit about a new model that we have developed, where sometimes the situation is where you need a really large grant to scale a particular project or idea, but in other times you need a big investment in a particular ecosystem or community in order to allow those individual nonprofits to sometimes work together, but also to just have the operating structure and the infrastructure that they need in order to continue to do some of the great work they've been doing in the past. An example of that is that right now we are supporting the Yield Giving Open Call, which is a project we're working with McKinsey Scott. Ultimately, there will be at least $251 million awards to community-based, community-led organizations with budgets between $1 and $5 million in the US. One could imagine taking a place that needs this kind of deep investment and long-term commitment and working in this kind of model of defining a set of parameters. You want to make sure that it's a community-based and truly community-led. You want some track record, and track record doesn't have to be that they've done an RCT or anything like that, but more than the track record that they have a history in the community that's respected and recognized and acknowledged. And you can set parameters and use an open call to really identify projects you may not have found before. One of the values of it is discovery. And I think Kellogg found that with their finalists for racial equity, that they found some new partners that they hadn't imagined existed.
And very exciting that you can get down to the grassroots. So organizations between 1 and 5 million, they really need help. So one of the things that I think all of us are trying to figure out is how to do more public and private finance. And the public side can be the big multinationals and multilateral institutions. It can be national governments. It could also be local community groups. And so I think as we think through what the ecosystem looks like, what the mentorship looks like, what the financing looks like, scaling is going to be essential for all of us and to try to help. But these are two real groundbreakers. So before we close, could we get some thoughts on what you think we should do more of and what you think we should do less of? So, all right, Carla, let's start with you.
I think it's more community partnerships. I think it's more general operating resources to communities. I think it's building capacity and infrastructure and having resources available. I think it's creating forums for folks to come together to have deep conversations around topics that are relevant to the local community. And I think it's less, from a philanthropic perspective, as less the philanthropy coming up with the ideas and philanthropy being responsive to the ideas. And so for us, we have a real commitment in working with the smallest of the organizations or the largest of the organizations. What we want is for people to come together in partnership. And so we've been seeding a lot of convenings because I think philanthropy, the power of convening, is one of our greatest tools, bringing people together to have conversations around topics that they don't always have the room and space, and then bringing in the technical assistance that they can tap into, be it on budgeting and structuring an organization, being it on communications. We just launched a communications toolkit on how to build your marketing base within your organization when you don't have the marketing line item within your organization, but ways in which you can really think about having conversations, opening up the door for different ideas, and then solutioning together.
Yeah, great idea. Lots of organizations don't have marketing programs. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I would double
Celia?
down on that, but I'll turn a bit to the donor side and the philanthropist side. And there is this quote that philanthropy is society's risk capital. In my experience, though, we're remarkably risk averse. It's true of the institutional funders. Mm-hmm. It's even more true of some of the individual high net worth donors, DAF holders, and so on. And I think there is a need to figure out how to bring some of the resources that are currently on the sidelines into play so that we can really kind of support the kinds of organizations that you're talking about. And so we need more willingness to take some gamble and risk. It's always interesting to me because some of the same individuals have made their fortune investing in startup companies, but the level of guarantee that they might expect from a nonprofit is much higher than what they would do to invest sometimes in a venture capital kind of way. So I think opening up the possibilities that philanthropy really should play this role, finding ways to make donors feel more comfortable about making those investments, that's part of what we try to do through our rigorous process, but we still need more ideas. Mm-hmm. Collaboration is one way. There are growth in donor collaboratives, and it's an opportunity for many to kind of diversify risk by playing with others.
I think that's true. There is a sense that if you're in with other smart money, that you'll do better together. But there's so many that are starting up with good innovations that the more that you can run prizes or you can have ecosystems where you can have mentoring to help others, it really helps. Some of the programs that we've done around the world in foreign assistance have benefited by the mentorship idea. Mm-hmm. And the more that you can create mentorship out of businesses for many of these programs, so that business and government think together about the problems in their communities and in their societies, it makes a big difference. And if we can create some tools, I think it's something that Concordia could help with, because Concordia is all about public-private partnerships. You both have an approach that is very helpful, multi-year. It is focused on flexible funding, but that is not what every donor or investor thinks. But we need more social impact funding, and it would be something that we could do at Concordia. So if anyone's interested, we've got two great role models and a lot of interest here from our panel.
Yeah, and if you're interested in learning more around what we're doing at the Kellogg Foundation, we invite you to go to everychildthrives.org, which lists all of our program and all of the ways in which communities are really showing up for each other. And so we welcome the partnership and we welcome the conversation.
And if you're looking for funding opportunities, On the Lever for Change website, we have profiles of every one of the top scoring applicants from our challenges, and there are amazing opportunities there. So don't be overwhelmed. Come and shop.
Excellent. All right. So hit these websites, and I'll tag in for UNICEF. Add that one to it. So thank you all very much. Good. Thank you.